All right, let's begin with our recap as 2023 comes to an end. This was one of the highlights of 2023. Christine Lagarde, European Central Bank President, Jerome Powell, U.S. Federal Reserve, and also Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England. These three, along with central bank governors across the world, but these three led the fight as far as the most influential central banks that pretty much set rates across the rest of the world, particularly this gentleman in the middle. They've differed on how the fight against inflation is going to take place in the new year, with this gentleman, the U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell in particular, saying that there could be at least 3 rate cuts in 2024. It set the markets on a tear. Now it's Christmas, so the markets are on holiday, but there's been thin volumes to ride out the final week of the year. Christine Lagarde over in the Eurozone, where inflation is at 2.4%, the latest numbers we're getting, inching closer to the 2% target. She said, well, I'm not so sure if we're going to be cutting rates in the new year. So it looks like they're a little bit, they want to wait for more data as far as the ECB is concerned. Also, in the United Kingdom, Andrew Bailey, similar language to Christine Lagarde. Even though we've seen inflation decelerate in the UK, we've seen inflation decelerate in the United States, and we've seen inflation decelerate in the Eurozone. So they all held rates at their last meetings of the year. We'll see how things pan out in 2024. And you can follow it everywhere, all here on Horizon News. So very interesting year with lots of coverage on them. We roll on through the recaps of 2023. How can you not speak about India? How can you not speak about 7.65% GDP growth in the third quarter of this year? Apple opening up 2 new stores. Tim Cook flying to India. But this was particularly early in the year. The Chandrayaan-3 breakthrough, landing on the moon, on the South Pole, lunar landing. India becoming the 4th country in the world to land on the moon after the United States, after China, after Russia. So very, very big news there coming from India. And of course, there's a big election coming up. India, of course, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, they've all said India is poised for growth. Foxconn saying they're going to invest $1.5 billion as companies try to diversify their supply chains away from China towards India. It's all been about India this particular year. Even Bollywood. We looked at Bollywood movies, 2 big movies from Bollywood, one of them making over $100 million this year. So India's done it everywhere. They've done it in tech, they've done it in healthcare, they went to the moon, they've done it in the economy, they've done it all. So it's very interesting. We roll on as we take a look at the look back on the year. China had all kinds of problems in 2023. The property market, big crisis over in China. I mean, Moody's, their outlook on China's property market was cut to negative. There was a host of liquidity issues. We had, of course, Country Garden and a number of other big companies there that were defaulting on their debt. So there's a lot of issues in China's market. China, of course, in deflationary territory. Also economic growth, they're looking at under 5%. China, of course, the 2nd largest economy in the world. They did not have a good 2023, and the property market was particularly one of the main issues. Why? So that's over in China as we look back on 2023. What else we got? Oh yeah, this was another bit of big news in the United States. SVB, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, depositors pulling out as much as $42 billion in just 3 days. It was a run on the bank. They are heavily skewed towards the venture capital sector as far as funding startups. As soon as all that money was pulled out, SVB went under. It sent ripples through the financial system over the United States. Of course, the government did come up. Of course, we had Signature Bank and other banks failing. This made a lot of news. So the collapse of SVB was one of the big news coming out of the United States. What else we got? There's a whole lot to talk about. There's so much to talk about in 2023. This gentleman ran here. SBV, Sam Bankman-SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. I almost called him SVB. Sam Bankman-Fried, guilty of fraud. The FTX, the big cryptocurrency exchange, it collapsed in November of 2022. There was a whole lot of talk about him going on the run. He was brought back to the United States. He went on trial. He's been found guilty of fraud. He faces up to 130 years in jail. He's going to be sentenced. Of course, we covered this news extensively on Horizon News, and you know about it because you watched it right here. So he was another big highlight of 2023. We'll see how things go with his sentencing. Of course, we got to talk about artificial intelligence. The machines are coming. 2023 was all about ChatGPT, Sam Altman, the investment, the multi-billion investment from Microsoft. The various competition coming from Bard, coming from Gemini, coming from Grok on Twitter. But artificial intelligence 2023 was the year of AI. And hey, this is going to be a story that you're going to be following very much in 2024. The rise of the machine. This sounds like Terminator 2, Judgment Day from, of course, James Cameron, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was a big movie. I'm showing my age. Big movie in the, when did Terminator 2 come out? Late 80s, early 90s is when Terminator 2 came out. All right, this is another man that made the news in the business world as far as the direction of one of Latin America's biggest economies, Argentina, the land of Lionel Messi. Javier Milei, the right-wing libertarian economist. Argentina made a radical choice to put this man in office, and I love this picture so much. He brought a chainsaw. I don't know if you've seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. This man brought a chainsaw to a rally, and it was supposed to signify cuts. He was going to cut spending. He was going to cut down the central bank. He was going to cut down the Argentine peso and replace it with the dollar. And he issued a decree recently, which we covered here on Arise News. He, of course, has cut severance pay for employees. He's made all types of cuts. He wants to cut the ministries, but can he do it? There were protests after he did that, but he says Argentina is in a very tough place. Inflation is going to, 200%. You've also got mass poverty. Youth in Argentina, they are, so use a Nigerian colloquial term, jackbuying. They're leaving Argentina, going to other climes. So he's got a lot of work to do. But Javier Milei, he made one of the headlines in 2023. So we're going to be interesting watching how he governs Argentina in 2024. Movies, one of my very big, lovely topics, Hollywood. The biggest film in 2023 was from a female director, and it was, of course, starring these big stars right here. How can I even forget their names at this point in time? I'm too excited. $1.4 billion. She was in Birds of Prey, also The Suicide Squad. She's gonna come to me in a second. But Barbie was the top movie in 2023. The Super Mario Brothers was in second place at $1.3 billion. Greta Gerwig, that's the director. Greta Gerwig had the biggest movie in 2023. Yes, biggest movie by a female director, $1.4 billion, ruled Hollywood. Super Mario Brothers was in number 2. But yes, this was a movie that had the whole Barbenheimer social media movement, where both movies were it was counter-programming. Both movies, essentially promoted themselves. It was a big event. If you're going to see Barbie, you also have to go see Oppenheimer. So massive, massive, massive film. It did very, very well. One of the great highlights of 2023. So that's over in Hollywood. And then, of course, Jim Ratcliffe. This is news coming in for just today. Jim Ratcliffe has finally gotten his 25% stake in Manchester United. But the key thing, these are non-controlling shares. So Manchester United has Class A shares and they've got Class B shares. The Class B shares have 10 times the voting power of Class A. So he, of course, is going to be he's buying Class B, which are going to be sold by the Glazer family. That's where the siblings hold that. But then it's going to be converted to Class A shares. And it's a non-controlling stake. He's supposed to inject about $300 million into the club. He's going to be in charge of operations. This has been a deal that's been long in the making, and it's one of the big news coming out today. I think we've got a quote from Mr. Ratcliffe where he talks about being excited to finally being able to take care of this of the club. But he did say yes. He said he was very excited to be able to finally take over and to rather take his stake in Manchester United, and they're looking forward to putting in to be influential as far as the operations of the club are concerned. So Jim Ratcliffe also making the news in 2023 as far as Manchester United. And of course, you got to come to Nigeria. President Tinubu, you just saw that special report from Adesua Omorwa, which is, of course, our correspondent in Aso Rock. She put together a lovely recap of 2023, talked a lot about the president. You just saw that a few minutes ago before we came on. President Tinubu, 2 big, bold reforms that the president took, removing expensive fuel subsidies and also exchange rate reform. He's still got to tackle electricity. Maybe he'll get to that. But of course, that has seen inflation continue to rise. It's caused quite a bit of hardship, which a lot of Nigerians are dealing with. But hey, I mean, coming from the prior administration to this one, there were a lot of bitter pills that had to be swallowed. He took the plunge. He made it happen, and we're hoping that in 2024, the economy of Nigeria hopefully will stabilize. Also, the big news, Arise News, we covered this exclusively. The first crude shipment to the Dangote Refinery. It's a $20 billion project that is, of course, courtesy of the wealthiest man in Africa, Alhaji Aliko Dangote. Apparently, he doesn't like me called Alhaji. He just wants to be called Aliko Dangote. We covered that, of course. We showed you the big tanker. We went, of course, boots on the ground and the refinery. We talked about the first crude shipment. And of course, we're hoping this is supposed to be supplied, of course, by the NNPCL. And we're looking forward to the refinery finally being able to refine crude and, save Nigeria nice foreign exchange in terms of how much is spent importing refined fuel. So that was another big story from this year. All right, now we've got our business leaders of the year. Now, of course, there's a little bit of controversy here because this day news, this is my picks. So the first three, I was on the same page as our sister publication at This Day newspaper, our Rise newspaper record. But this day, they had Melek Kyari of the NNPCL as their fourth pick. I changed that. I said it's got to be Tony Elumelu, the spearheader of Afrocapitalism. Of course, we just talked about Dangote. He is, of course, all these men are job creators here. And I did wish we had a woman. I did wish we had a woman on this, and we talked about this on the morning show. But, it is what it is. So Dangote, of course, with what he's done with the refinery, the milestones that he's reached as well, job creator. Femi Otedola, I mean, what can you say? We, of course, had Money Central, the publisher of Money Central, on the Global Business Report. They picked Femi Otedola as their corporate icon of the year. FBN Holdings joined the trillion market cap club on the NGX. What can you say about Geregu, which is on its way there as well? Geregu is up about 168%. FBN Holdings up over 100%. Of course, you remember the back and forth with Transcorp between himself and the bromance with Mr. Tomi Elumelu that sent the shares. Transcorp is up about 820%. Transcorp Hotels about 600%. So Femi Otedola, the billionaire, he definitely made headlines in 2023. He's one of my business leaders of the year. And of course, Alhaji Rabiu, the head of the BOA Group. We ran into him earlier this year at the Africa CEO Forum, which of course Arise News covered, as well as Arise News covered so many events this past year. The IFC, International Finance Corporation, signed a $500 million deal with the BOA Group, BOA Cement, to build in Sokoto plants there that will result in about 12,000 jobs. Biggest investment made in the northern Nigeria. So, of course, BOA Group, BOA Cement, also BOA Foods, both on the $1 trillion naira market cap on the NGX. So he, of course, is part of my business. And then what can you say about Tony Elumelu? I mean, come on. He, of course, he shut down Lagos just past weekend with his all-white Christmas party. It was the who's who that were in attendance there. Of course, Tony Elumelu, I mean, this past year, Transcorp Power hit a milestone of 10 years in operation after the post-privatization. They, of course, one of the, invested in the Ughelli power plant, about 972 megawatts. UBA is up about what, 120%. Transcorp, as you just mentioned, of course, with that bromance that he had with Femi Otedola, up about 800%. Transcorp Hotels up about 600%. And of course, this man, of course, at COP28 in Dubai, held a high-level delegation with the World Trade Organization Director General, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Tony Elumelu, of course, pushing climate change, pushing the need for jobs for the youth. That's my business leaders of 2023 from Nigeria. So you're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News.